Thank you. And it is now 12:04. So Ruth, if you want to
Okay.
go ahead.
Do we have a quorum?
We do. We have Commissioner
Okay.
Adams, we have you and Commissioner King, Commissioner Wenzel, and Commissioner Mayer and Commissioner Johnson. So we do have a quorum.
Okay. And then we have one guest.
Oh, and we have Commissioner Moore joining now.
Okay. And would the guests like to introduce themselves?
Sure, I can introduce myself. I'm Judy Richards, a frequent flyer of this meeting, and I am on various boards, but most active on Northwest Senior and Disability Services and on the State Independent Living Council. Thank you for letting me join you today.
And then we have another guest.
Hi, I'm Misty Fall. I am just interested in possibly becoming a home health caregiver and curious about what's going on.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay.
Ruth, we had another person join. Let me see.
Hi,
James Reynolds.
Oh, I just wanted to let you know this is Randy. I'm here. I'm sorry. My video is a mess. I logged off and turned off my computer. Oh, maybe it's caught up with me now. Turned off my computer completely and it still was a mess. So I've been looking like a cyborg most of the day. I'm sorry about that. But if I lose video, I am at least here, so you'll know.
Okay.
And James, could you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, my name is James Reynolds, and I'm one of the owners of Amada Senior Care in Portland. We've been in the Portland area for about 11, 12 years now. Contracted with the state for Medicaid services for the last 5 or 6 years. And so I just wanted to hop on here and get familiar and start joining these more often.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we need to adopt the agenda. I need a motion for the acceptance of the agenda.
So moved, Commissioner Mayer.
And I, Commissioner Adams, second it.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor? Oh, yes.
I'm sorry, just with the note that we did receive late notice yesterday that Nikisha and Erica will be unable to attend, so we've had to make some last minute adjustments.
Okay, well, I made an assumption there that since the email went out that everybody already knew that. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yes.
So
if you want, I can include that in my motion. We
okay.
accept the agenda with the understanding that there were some revisions.
Okay. Then the second is still stands?
Yes, it does.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Approve. Any no's? Review of the approval of the March minutes. I need a motion.
So moved, Colonel Mayer. Excuse me, Commissioner Mayer. Oops. Look out.
Commissioner Wenzel will second the motion.
Okay. Any discussions? Any comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. Any announcements?
Yes, Commissioner Ruth, this is Commissioner Adams. The announcement I'd like to make is here in Southern Oregon and Valley Lift, we are on a new software now. And want to bring forward that within this new software we have down here for Valley Lift to help people with disabilities and seniors go to places. This new software is able to now, as a consumer, make your own rides, cancel your own rides, track your rides. as to where they're coming from and where they're going to. You'll be able to talk to other consumers with this new software. And it's a whole brand new world for us, including, and once Valley Lift is used to the new software, it will automatically be connected to what is called the medical rights. For people that are going to doctors and dentists, this new software will be connected to providers that when you go into a doctor and you're out of the doctor's office, you'll be able to track your provider picking you up through Medicaid, Medicare. I love this new software. And so we're just trying the new first half first for Valley Lift.
Please keep us informed as to how it works, because this be important all around the state.
You will.
Okay, any other announcements? Okay, well, this is a time we set aside for public testimony. Do we have any public testimony?
We do, Ruth, and Jenny has asked me to read this. This is from a home care worker. If I did not send this to the right people, you are directed to forward this email to the right people.
We need to, Heidi, we need to have the name.
Oh, this is from Avery Horton.
Okay.
You are directed to make sure my testimony is not redacted in any way, shape, or form and is included in entirety in the meeting minutes. Begin testimony. Public testimony for April 2024 OHCC meeting. Full disclosure, I am an SEIU Local 503 board member. I am not speaking for the union. Questions in this testimony are not rhetorical and require an answer from the OHCC. Why hasn't the video from March 2024 OHCC meeting been posted on YouTube? OHCC needs to respond to the above during the meeting. Care providers are still experiencing late pay and inaccurate pay. What exactly has DHS OHCC done to resolve this problem? Who exactly is ultimately responsible for the payroll? Please provide a copy of the workflow diagram showing the processes and people involved in processing payroll to me. OHCC needs to respond to the above during this meeting. I received this message via email. You have a CPR card that is about to expire. I replied and received the following response. You will have to apply to be approved for OHCC to pay for your certification. If you want OHCC to pay, you will need to fill out the request form. Once approved, you will be provided options for in-person classes in your area that are approved by OHCC. However, this list of options is not available in advance. However, if you want to independently pay for your certification, OHCC doesn't have a master list of locations that offer the training. You would need to do your own independent research. Here is what you will need to know about the CPR First Aid Program, the option to request OHCC to pay for your training. For CPR First Aid, here is the link to our certifications provider resource page. Look under CPR and First Aid Training. You will find what information you need here. If you want OHCC to pay for your certification class, you will need to fill out the request form. If you have any other questions, you will need to reach out to our CPR First Aid team, and they will be able to support you further. Why not send all of the above information the first time when a care provider needs to renew their CPR First Aid certification? Do you see how you make more work for yourselves by failing to give workers all the information they need the first time? OHCC needs to respond to the above during this meeting. Time is of the essence. Now that the OHCC and DHS has been made aware of their shortcomings and failures in a public meeting, they cannot take the position they did not know. Testimony respectfully submitted by Avery T. Horton Jr., home care worker, citizen voter, taxpayer, State of Oregon, as always, acting in individual capacity. End of testimony.
Thank you, Heidi. This is Jenny, the interim director. So our videos are posted on our webpage, the Oregon Home Care Commission webpage under meetings, and you can find the links to the YouTube videos there. We did confirm that March is there, and I believe all of them through, was it October, Heidi?
I think it's from
already there?
October of last year is when they
Yeah.
started requiring this. Yeah.
Yeah, so we did move our YouTube page. The commission had its own YouTube page, and it's since been moved under DHS, Oregon Department of Human Services. But Heidi and I confirmed all the links work, so you can go to our website and find that information. In terms of the second point, we know that there's been issues because of provider time capture and people not being paid on time or always accurately. And everybody may or may not know that phase 2 of provider time capture is being implemented this summer. And we're anticipating that that will resolve a lot of the problems related to later partial payments because it removes the manual data entry that the local office has to do to process those payments. Right now, when home care workers and personal care attendants go into provider time capture and enter their time, the local office has to download a payroll batch and then manually enter that time into our payment system. So phase 2 of that project will eliminate that step, and we anticipate that that will resolve a lot of issues. As everyone may know, we have a later partial payment request form on our website that home care workers, personal support workers, and personal care attendants can use to report payment issues and also to request late pay penalty fees. So when they fill out that form, we prioritize by those who have not been paid, and we reach out to the local office to make sure that they're working on that issue. And we always encourage providers to reach out to the local office right away if there's been a payment issue. In terms of the CPR, Mr. Horton brings up an excellent point, and I think we have some room for improvement with those emails. Those are auto-generated emails from our learning management system that are triggered by the due date of the CPR card. So we do have the ability to add more information to that email, and so I'll be working with Roberta Lilly, our training manager, on that. And that's my response.
This is Commissioner Adams to Jenny. Could you explain more what phase 2 is? I didn't know what was in phase 2.
Yeah, so phase 2, that will automate the time from our provider time capture system into what we call the mainframe system. And that's the time has to be recorded in our mainframe system to pay workers. So there's not that automatic transfer of data into that system. But with phase 2, it will be automated. So the time that a provider enters into provider time capture will automatically be entered into the mainframe. So that staff don't have to do any kind of data entry. And we know when there's data entry, there are errors. So it will automate that connection.
So will that get the checks out to the providers quicker?
Well, it's still, the checks are still based on the payroll calendar. So there's a set time that every pay period where they're paid. So it won't change that.
My next question is, if something fouls up in the mainframe, is there a backup somewhere?
I don't believe there's a backup. I mean, the time is in provider time capture, so it would have to be re-entered. But I know that they're doing a lot of testing for phase 2 to make sure that everything works correctly.
Okay.
Paul,
Yeah, just an observation about the automated email. And yeah, I think that's a helpful suggestion, and I think we could probably make a good change in that regard. It seemed a little cumbersome, the information shared. Maybe it could be abbreviated and edited a little bit, and maybe just a link as well for, if there's questions, they would be linked to some type of a resource that we could offer that would give further explanation or provide other feedback if needed. But I do believe, as you've observed, Jenny, that we could probably make a better, we could probably improve our communication with the home care worker, with the providers in this way.
Thank you for that feedback.
Okay, is there any other public testimony? Okay, then let's move on to the next reports. And for the people that are visiting, the commissioners that are sitting in this room now are representing different organizations. And so this is a time that they share with us what their group is doing. So we'll have Mary talk with us about the Governor's Commission on Senior Services.
Okay, I have 2 items today, Madam Chair. First of all, just to let you know, my 3-year term on the GCSS is coming to an end at the end of this month on the 31st. And I have submitted all my paperwork and applied for an additional 3-year term. So I'm just waiting now to hear whether or not I will be appointed again. And the second thing was the GCSS is very interested in our strategic planning here on OHCC and would like, if possible, to get a copy of that. And I told them I didn't want to commit to that unless I got concurrence with this commission. So what do you think about sharing?
This is Jenny. I think it's great. Yeah, I think it would be a great idea to share that information, and we're going to put it on our public facing website too.
Okay, well then I will go ahead and send it to them after this. So thank you very much.
Excellent. And you can always, if they're interested, David and I can always go to the meeting and talk about the process.
Oh, that would be great. I will tell them that as well.
Awesome. I like to sign David up for work.
Absolutely. He doesn't have enough to do, right? Thanks, Jenny.
This may be a good opportunity based upon their inquiry about the strategy to even have some type of a meeting with them, or like you just mentioned, Jenny, you and David or others, because we've been talking about collaboration, right? And
right.
And this might be a bridge, a way in which we could begin to pursue that more closely with the GCSS.
Absolutely. I'll carry that message. Thank you.
Okay, the Oregon Disabilities Commission.
Okay, yeah. We had Chris Enquist. He had law enforcement training for
interactions
with people with disabilities. We had Jennifer Davis presented on
pharmacy board, customer services for people who are deaf
and hard of hearing, and we had John Craig discuss
public utilities commission customer service.
And that's all we have for now. Thank you.
Does the Disabilities Commission have any openings?
Yes,
So you're still seeking new members then?
Yes, we are.
Okay. We'll keep that in our minutes too, so that people will realize that there's still openings there.
Thank you.
Okay, Robin, what do you have for the area agencies on aging?
Oh, my video is horrible, isn't it? Sorry about that. All right, I think my camera might be dying or something. So, hi everyone, this is Randy Moore. I'm the director of the Senior and Disability Services Program at Oregon Cascades West Council of Governments. We serve Lynn, Benton, and Lincoln County, but I am wearing my representative of Oregon Association of Area Agencies on and Disabilities, the O4AD today. So just wanted to give you some brief insight as to what sort of is working in the world of O4AD right now. I think the biggest thing to mention, and I'm sure there will be more updates about this as time goes on today, is that Oregon Project Independence Medicaid is coming. It's been approved through all the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services and the Oregon Health Authority. Hot off the presses this morning, there was a transmittal and training supplied by APD to share with us about what that transition period is going to look like. I think the goal is for a soft launch of the OPIM project starting in June of this year, and with the hope that all current consumers and new consumers would be able to access the program within 9 months to 12 months. So pretty exciting that that's going to be coming down the road. I would say that all of us really feel like adding OPIM to the suite of services that we offer as area agencies on aging is going to be really great for Oregonians and consumers. Of course, any change, especially a major one like this, can be a little traumatic and a little worrisome. So we're working our way through all those stressors and trying to figure out how best to do this without affecting services to consumers in any negative way. So just keep your ear to the ground about that. I know that the APD representatives will be probably talking about that program and the launch of it more as time comes on. The other thing I just wanted to mention was that the all of the area agencies on aging, there's 16 of us in the state, are required as area agencies on aging to have a document called the area plan. It's basically a strategic plan that covers a 4-year period. Development of the area plans that will kick off in July of 2025 are currently underway. So if you work with an area agency on aging and you'd like your voice heard about the programs that they offer and the supports that they provide to the community, it would be really great to do advocacy and reach out to them to make sure that we're providing services that are meeting the needs of our communities. Part of the development of the area plan is doing needs assessment for the area that you serve, talking to providers, staff, the community, and just making sure that the goals and objectives that you're setting for the next 4 years are meeting the needs of the region that you serve. The state Community Services and Supports Unit does provide for us. Oh, I got this wrong the other day, and I'm probably going to get it wrong off the cuff today too. But they do provide us some focus areas that are required focus areas that we work on. There are 5 or 6 of them. I've been struggling. It's like naming the 7 dwarfs. There are 5 or 6 of them, and so the ones that I can name off right off the top of my head are working for the Aging and Disability Resource Connection, so ADRC or Information Referral, family caregivers, working with tribal elders, nutrition services, health promotion, legal justice, elder justice. I think that's all of them. So, and then area agencies on aging have the ability to choose other things that they would like to add to the list. So for example, my area agency on aging added focus areas last time around financial wellness and transportation. So work with your area agencies on aging. I know they're going to want to hear your voice as they start developing that document moving forward. The only other things I think I want to mention is that we are working, since COVID, we've had virtual meetings with the leadership between APD and the leadership of O4AD. And we are working on, at least occasionally, trying to figure out how to get around the table together. I mean, I think what we've realized is that the area agencies on aging serve a large percentage of older adults and people with disabilities who have in-home long-term care and support services, like about 60% of them across the state. And so that relationship and how we communicate and work together and be collaborative is really, really important. And we're starting to really miss that conversation that happened around the table before 2020. And so we're working on starting to develop those in-person meetings. So I just wanted to let you know that. And then the only other thing that I would like to mention is, the legislative session has wrapped up. O4AD did do some advocacy in support of some different bills and some different priorities, including a reinstatement of some case management dollars that had been cut from the agencies that do Medicaid services. And so I am never the best person to talk about that advocacy. I would say that our lobbyist, Nicole, or the director, Phil, would be good options to come and talk about that. If we haven't had an update, I'm trying to remember when the last time they came was. So, but that's my update unless anyone has any questions.
And don't you have a conference this month?
So last month, representatives from O4AD actually went to the policy. Well, it's so weird because here's April already. It started in March, I guess it was. Members of our state group went to the policy briefing in Washington, D.C. to talk about the National Association of Area Agencies on Aging and meet with people on the Hill and try to do some advocacy. This month, there are several people going to different conferences. You might be talking, Ruth, some of us are going to the National Public Employee Labor Relations Conference, which is next week in Savannah, Georgia.
Well, I'm thinking of the one here in Salem.
Oh, the one in Salem. Oh, you're right. So sorry. Yes, there is the quarterly meeting is happening in Salem. April 22nd, I think, is the day.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm not.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes. And of course, advocates are a strong group of people that we would like to have at those meetings. So if you have never been to a quarterly meeting, this is an in-person and hybrid meeting. We'd love to see your face. Maybe I'll actually get to see some of you in person. So yes, thank you, Ruth. I'll post the dates for that in the chat.
Okay, thank you. Okay, do we have a report from the CAC and the CCOs?
Yeah, because of the legislator is a requirement for the CCOs to do a share for 2023, even though this is 2024. Some of the CCOs are scratching their heads as to what they need to reinvest in partnerships and providers. So some of the CCOs are trying to figure that out, even though it's a requirement from the legislator for them to do the share program along with their CACs. Now, the NEMT, which is non-emergent medical transport, there's some positives and some negative with that idea. OHA has been wanting to have Uber and them come on board to be a provider, but there's been some downfalls trying to they seem to think that they can't follow the same rules as other providers when providing medical service. And I think as OHAs should be careful with that because they don't, or Uber and them don't provide van accessible lifts with vans in them to provide medical service to doctors and dentists like other providers do. And the TAC group that I'm on, some of us are really unsure about that, how that's going to turn out. And the CCOs are also scratching their head and how that's going to work. I just don't think it's going to work that well with Uber and the other company. Simply the fact because they don't have vans with lifts in them. If a person like in a hospital and they're down in the emergency room, if they can't get a hold of the provider after hours and they need to rely on Uber, they're not going to be able to get home until the next following morning. And that's where the problem lies. And there's a lot of talk about that. I got my next meeting coming up, I believe, in May for that.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, our next speakers are not going to be able to come today. So Heidi and Jenny have a fill-in for us. So go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Again, this is Jenny. I apologize for being off camera today. I wanted to let you know that APD, Aging and People with Disability, the Office of Developmental Disability Services, the Commission, and the Oregon Health Authority have applied for this intensive technical assistance program that's being offered to states through the Direct Care Workforce Strategy Center. And it's an opportunity to receive up to 250 hours of individualized technical assistance to help with our workforce development, recruitment, and retention. And it's just a fantastic opportunity. If we're selected, we'll be assigned a technical assistance coach and we'll have access to subject matter experts. So this intensive program is being facilitated by the State Association Consortium, led by Advancing States, in partnership with the National Association of State Directors of Developmental Disability Services and the National Association of State Medicaid Directors. And what we're wanting technical assistance with is like some of those non-financial areas that we can look into and see if we can tap into that. How can we build that into our strategy? You know, Oregon is very fortunate that we have a unionized workforce and they have higher wages than most people around the state, if not, I mean, the nation for our workforce. And then they also have access to benefits and training, where some states in the nation don't even have that. So we're really fortunate to be able to do that. To partner with SEIU and have those benefits for people. But we also know there are socioeconomic reasons that prevent people from joining the workforce or staying in the workforce. So we're really interested in looking at like if there are wraparound services that would benefit somebody to come into this workforce and stay. So some of the ideas would be like, are there type of housing supports? Are we able to provide any kind of transportation assistance or childcare resources, things like that? So we did have an interview. Was that yesterday, David? Yes, yesterday. All the states who apply are being interviewed, and so we were able to meet with Direct Care Workforce Strategy Centers and all their partners, and we said what our goals were and what we hope to gain from that technical assistance. So if we're selected, there's an opportunity for everyone to participate in that. We'll invite our partners with SEIU to join us, as well as other organizations with a focus on workforce development. So I'm pretty excited about that. David and Masara were part of that interview yesterday, and I don't know if they have anything they want to add to that. I'm pausing to see if they have anything they want to add to that.
I mean, I think that you covered it really well, Jenny. It's a great opportunity for us to just get other strategies to think outside the box even more on what it looks like to recruit into this workforce across the board, right? This doesn't just apply to direct in-home care providers, but also for adult foster homes. Like it's a big program that can help us. So I'm really excited to hear other strategies and really think through new ways to really not just recruit, but also support the current workforce, help with retention, and help build them up to really understand like, hey, this is a career path for you, that there's ways that you can grow in it and seek outside and other, or not outside, but other opportunities within this field as well.
And just to add, I agree 100%. I'm excited for this opportunity. I hope it works out. The the interview was really interesting, and it seemed like the people who were employed had such a great knowledge and expertise in this field, and they would be, really great to be able to work with them and learn from them. So I'm really hoping that this works out for, for us and for the workforce to benefit from it.
Thank you, Ms. Sarah. And like I said, if we are selected, we receive this intensive technical assistance, and it's intensive because I think it's only like 8 months. So we really need to be focused and dedicated to this effort and really involved. So we have the commitment from Fair Boards that and the Oregon Health Authority to supporting the time and staff resources to be able to participate in this. So keep your fingers crossed. I'm really excited. I'll let you know what we find out. I think they said, was it the 18th we should find out of April? And I'm not sure how many other states applied, but I think we might be an interesting challenge for them because we do have a lot of positives that are already in place for this workforce. So, and we know that we're still having issues with recruitment and retention. So this might be a challenge for them to help us figure out other areas that will help us. So I'm really hopeful. So fingers crossed.
Yeah, I was going to add to that, Jenny, like it was
Yeah.
even mentioned in the interview that we have some of the highest wages in the nation for this workforce, and that they were still flabbergasted for why it kind of doesn't work and why that those would be the traditional things that they would recommend. So what does that look like? So like I mentioned earlier, I think it's a really fascinating challenge we have ahead of us.
Jenny, this is Marsha. Do you have any documentation about what they offer and the things you were just mentioning that they might be able to work with us on?
I'm sorry, work with what?
Work with us.
Oh, yeah, I can send you the link to the Direct Care Workforce Strategy Center and the information about the technical assistance.
So interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
I know as a consumer, the major reasons that a consumer can't come is the vehicle died, and I won't even hire a provider if they have a large number of young children, because they have to be home and be mom or dad for every cold, and it just makes their ability to come so erratic, and then they have a hard time balancing childcare and work. I'm excited.
George, you have a question?
Madam Chair, this is you, Jenny. I have friends that is in Chicago, that is in Arizona, and in Dallas, Texas. And I wanted to let you know that they don't know what we're doing here, but they said that Oregon State is rated #1 as far as provider service for state providers. And they can't figure out why we're doing so better and why they can't do so better in those states. So just with us being #1, that's what we're classified as in the state for this service.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, do you want to also show and tell people what we're doing in our one system?
We are planning that for the next session.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I have some other things I'd like to share with you as well.
Go ahead.
If that's okay, because we have some time. So Aging and People with Disability is using their ARPA money, and that stands for let's see, American Rescue Plan Act. And so that was additional money the states received during the pandemic. So we have money, they have money that they can spend on some new programs for workforce development. And one of the things we're looking at is a provider navigator program. So it would, I'll explain that in a second, but because of the ARPA money has to be spent by the end of March of 2025, this may be a short program, but the hope is if it's successful that we can find permanent funding for it. So the Provider Navigator program's focus is on helping people who are applying to join the workforce and those who do join the workforce for that first 6 months that they're with us to really help them navigate through the system, like kind of helping them through the application process, make sure they find their way to orientation, make sure they know how to use Orchards to do their background check. What to communicate to the local offices. And then once they enroll, you know, working with that person to make sure they know how to use Carina, how they know how to sell themselves on Carina, making sure they do their required core training through Carewell, helping them with interviewing skills and communication skills and time management, because we know that sometimes people don't always renew their provider number on time. So we want to make sure that we're helping people have the tools to be able to plan ahead for the future and making sure that they continue to have a provider number. But it's more, you know, we recognize that when somebody applies, they're kind of sometimes on their own trying to figure out the system. And so we're hopeful that this will help bring people into the workforce and then help them remain in the workforce by kind of keeping an eye on them, making sure they're using Carina to find somebody to work for, like kind of reassessing the situation. What kind of help does this person need to find work and be successful in this field? So we are preparing a request for proposal, and we'll be sending that out for organizations to respond to, and we would have consultants similar to the Employer Resource Connection, but with a focus on home care workers. So again, this is an aging and people with disability program that they're using their ARPA money for. So we'll see what the success is, and then hopefully we can replicate that through other programs and have some permanent funding. And we identified some of them. Rachel, this one's for you because I know you like metrics. We said, how would we know if this program was successful? And so some of the things we were looking at is if it takes less time to actually get through the application process. So from the time they submit their paperwork to when they're approved, we'd like to see a decrease in the amount of time it takes that. A higher completion rate of core training. So when somebody joins this workforce, they have to complete 8 hours of core training within 120 days of joining the workforce. And unfortunately, we have to terminate providers every month because they're not doing that core training. We'd like to look at the length of time between their enrollment and actually completing that core training. Another big area is compliance with using the provider time capture system. So if somebody needs some more, I forgot to mention, that's one of the other things is, you know, helping support that person be compliant with using our provider time capture system, you know, connecting them with resources, you know, kind of being that one-on-one help for them. We are also wanting to look at how long from when they're approved to when they actually start working for somebody. We want to see if there's any increase in our certifications so people can earn a higher wage. We want to look at the length of time from when they complete orientation and they enroll, the length of time it takes to do their part in Orchards to do a background check. So that's what we're looking at. We want to also make sure that this program is able to serve individuals who speak other languages, because we know that people who speak other languages, that's sometimes a barrier too to joining this workforce. So I'm pretty excited about that. Masara and David are also involved in that, so I'm not sure if there's anything you want to add.
I don't know, Jenny, you covered everything. Okay. We're actually working on a flyer for providers And so we're kind of like a couple of steps ahead. So it's available for providers to refer themselves to the program as well.
Yes, thank you. So I did
Mhm.
let Michelle Unger with SEIU know that we are looking at issuing an RFP for this program. Another update is you may have heard Jane Ellen talking about what she is terming like a matchmaker service and what we've named linking consumers and providers. So individuals who need more support to use Carina to find a worker. So not just teaching somebody about Carina, but individuals who need somebody to perform that task for them for whatever reason. So going through Carina, finding a list of potential matches, doing that pre-screening, and then helping that person with interviewing. So that is also, there's some ARPA funds related to that as well. And that for that part, it would be home care work, individuals receiving services through aging and people with disabilities, and also the health systems division. And we're rolling that up until the end of March. We're tracking it separately, but it's part of the Employer Resource Connection program, which is a good fit because if somebody is needing help with Carina, they probably also have some other needs for teaching and training on how to be a successful employer. One other update, the ARPA funds are also being used for a media campaign. So this is in partnership with Aging and People with Disabilities, the Office of Developmental Disability Services, and the Oregon Health Authority to do a focus media campaign on recruiting workers, in-home workers, home care workers, personal support workers, personal care attendants, and also adult foster home providers. So that request for proposal is out into the universe right now, and I believe it closes April 23rd. So we're excited about that. We'll actually have some dedicated money to use towards marketing and buying ads and really having a strategic message. And I think that's all the updates I have. Any questions?
Yeah, this is Commissioner Adams, Jenny. Why so many? I'm trying to get my head around this idea of 8 hours of something. If the state provider doesn't do 8 hours or 8 sessions, then they're terminated. What is keeping the providers from doing those 8 hours or 8 sessions before being terminated?
That's a great question, and I don't know the full answer to that. Sometimes they forget to do it, or they didn't realize there's 2 parts to it, or some people wait until the last minute and they miss the deadline. I think some people join the workforce without any intention of working in this workforce. Sometimes people apply to join the workforce for unemployment purposes, benefit purposes. So that's a great question that I'm not really sure, but it is something that we're looking into. So the online, the 8 hours of training there's 2 parts to it, and it's all online. So it is convenient for most workers. They can take it at their own pace. It's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So that might be a good question to ask Molly with CareWell when she comes today to talk about CareWell trainings.
Okay.
Jenny?
Yes.
Marcia here. When in regards to the Navigator, well, forget the name of it, one of the programs.
Provider Navigator?
No, where they possibly will look at childcare and transportation.
Oh, our intensive technical assistance.
Yes. Suggestion to add on to that list. I find many providers are stretched and are dealing with basic math problems, English language, or whatever language, their reading skills, are dealing with dyslexia. if there could be a basic remediation, a possibility of going and working on some of those skills to upgrade them so it's easier for them to do trainings in the future and earn certifications. They may be stuck at not being able to increase their professional skills because in the past they lacked the skill foundation.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Thank you for bringing that up. One of the things I didn't mention with the provider navigator is one of the things we'd like a contractor to work with the person on is computer literacy skills. And I think that might help individuals use the provider time capture system and also doing their training through Carewell, sorry, and using Carina.
Yeah, the skill building foundations might be able to be worked on at community colleges across Oregon. They might have develop a program that would help us.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
I think that would attract a good many people to be providers so that they could get a free upgrade and it would change their lives.
Right. Thank you for adding that.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, let's move on then to David with your strategic planning.
Yeah, thanks, Ruth. Before I get started, I just want to have on the record my disappointment with Jenny, as she mentioned the Matchmaker service and not singing the Matchmaker song. So I just I want that on the record. So, thanks everyone for having me here. I just want to give a quick update on where we're at with the strategic plan at the moment. We had a meeting with all the staff at OHCC to gauge the parts of the plan that they are interested in. So there was a in-depth review and looking over all the goals and objectives that you have come up with. And we've got all of their interests. So those start being assigned to those tasks coming up here in the next couple of weeks. And we'll be starting it in May. So there are a couple of you commissioners that I'd love to get some of your the stuff that you're interested in on as well, so that I can add you to that schedule. I have some of your interests, but not everybody. So I'll reach out to you individually so that I can just gauge where you feel that you can fit into the plan the best. And we'll get moving on that. Really quick, Paul, I see your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, David. Thanks for the report. I'd be interested in hearing in general terms how the strategy came across to the staff. Were they excited about the direction in some ways, had questions or concerns? You don't have to go into detail, but in general, how was it received?
Yeah, thanks for that, Paul. I feel that it went really well. I think everybody was super excited and knowing that like there was just, instead of just kind of doing what we've been doing, right? There's kind of this new goal to be pointing towards. And I mean, if Masara doesn't mind commenting, since she was one of the staff there, what was your impression, Masara?
All right. My impression was, yeah, the same. I think a lot of people were, in our staff were very interested. One of the really encouraging things that Jenny shared with us is that, is to encourage in the staff to not think of their, of their task right now, just to think of what they want to engage in, right? And so to kind of go off of like their interest and their ways that we want to contribute as well. So I think a lot of folks are really excited to do a lot of engagement. I know few people that I talked with, they're really interested in community work, you know, as well, and engaging with community. So I think I did see like all of us, like our our thought, like the wheels are like kind of turning in terms of like, all right, you know, there's really exciting projects coming up. But of course, it's like things that we have to, you know, adjust our schedules with, and looking at what we're doing. And sometimes, you know, as we were looking at the things, there was some things that were like, we're already doing that. So let's, you know, let's find ways that we are, you know, we're not adding, but improving really the work that we're doing. So it really aligns with the work that, you know, that we are already doing, and even, you know, more exciting opportunities to be involved in.
Yeah, thank you, Masara. I appreciate that. And I will say that I think I can say this collectively for the staff, to all of you commissioners, that they really appreciated the fifth goal of a focus on how to improve what they are doing, and reevaluating how it could be done better and more efficiently. Already came up with some ideas out of that. Just even throwing that seed that they know you're there supporting them and wanting them to excel at what they're already doing, and really build a better foundation for them, and for the growth that is possible. So I think I can say their heartfelt thanks to you. So I'll be giving another update on Monday and letting you know when the staff will be in. You'll be hearing from me personally if I don't know where specifically you want to be on the goals yet, or if I need some clarification, I'll reach out to you individually and get you on there as well. So I'm looking forward to working with all of you commissioners a little bit more on those particular goals as they start rolling out. The next thing I did want to bring up was you received a survey. Gosh, I want to say it was about a month ago now, about the annual reporting for this meeting and what kind of rhythm you would like to see. So we've gone ahead and looked at all of that, looked at your input, your thoughts on how frequent you'd like, for example, Nikisha to come, and other individuals to give us updates on programs across the state. We've compiled that into a kind of schedule throughout the rest of the year, and we'll be using that to kind of get things going. I would ask, just for scheduling purposes, right, when we want to have a special report, or there's somebody that we do think of, that we maybe have a couple of months to make sure that that happens, to get on the books, so that we're not trying to cram something into somebody's schedule just a month out, but maybe 2 months out could be a little bit easier for us to get people into this meeting. So we're looking forward to getting that out. We've got a pretty good rhythm. We saw and heard some of the gaps of reports that we're not getting currently. So thank you for bringing those up, and we'll be reaching out to get those onto the schedule as well for people to be able to come here. So yeah, that was a quick update on that. Any questions there?
Yeah, David, this is Commissioner Adams. Did you get anything from me lately?
I'll check with Heidi. Yeah, but I think we got your response to the survey for sure.
Okay. Is there anything else you need from me?
Yeah, I'll reach out to you, George, if there's something that I do need.
Okay.
Okay, is that the end of your report?
That's the end of me. Yeah, I mean, I can
Okay.
keep talking because I like talking to all of you.
Well, that's why I wanted to be sure, because I knew you like to keep going. So
Sorry,
Okay.
I had to put that on the recording that was really funny.
Okay, Paul, what?
Yeah, and this may be on the report. It probably is. So forgive me, David, if it's kind of redundant. So, but with the strategy, which again, we're all excited about, I wondered if, were we planning on, for example, and maybe this isn't needed, so I don't know, but maybe having it printed up nicely, or something like that, or maybe just the online version, and sharing it with Fair Boars, Nikisha, Jane Ellen, Dana, other leadership, with whom we have to do in our commission, just so they could maybe a special communique, letting them know that our strategy has been completed for the next 3 years or whatever our time frame is. I can't remember. And here is a version of it. If they would love to have any feedback from them. I realize again we're going to be doing those type of things, but kind of a formal presentation or rolling out, if you will, for lack of better terms, of the survey. I just thought, I wonder if that would be helpful, and just again to continue to generate interest and hopefully support for many of the things we're trying to do.
Yeah,
Paul,
absolutely, Paul.
Paul,
Oh,
we
sorry.
also thought we wanted to add this to legislators to educate the legislative system as to who we are too.
Yeah, absolutely, Ruth. So to both points, Paul, absolutely. I'll be putting this into Microsoft Project and making that available so that we can track everything. You'll see who's assigned to which tasks and everything. So now that I have all that information, the report will be able to, you'll be able to see that on next meeting. So I'll share that with everybody starting in May, and that'll be a rolling regular thing that I produce, and people can see as live updates are happening and tasks are being completed. And it'll be shareable, and we want to make the strategic plan, Jenny mentioned, it'll be public on our website at some point, but also when we put together our communication packet for community partners, for the legislature, for other programs within ODHS, it'll be included in there so they know what we're about.
Yeah, I just think that's really wonderful, David. Thank you. And I very much need it. We need to go big and bold. We need to let people know, hey, we're here and this is what we're about, especially as Ruth mentioned, the legislators, the other leaders, so that my thinking is in general, when they think of home care, they think of the commission, you know, because they've been informed and challenged and encouraged, and we've had interaction. So thank you for that good work. I look forward to that.
Thanks, Paul. I'm excited to share it too. So,
David, will we every few meetings have a little time slot and say and about our strategic plan, and just talk briefly about any new accomplishments? So it's just not a piece of paper sitting, that we interact with the paper and the goals on a very kind of frequent manner, so that we are aware of what we've done and are fueled to go and do what we haven't.
yeah, Marcia, I'll be here pretty much every month talking about it, especially at the very beginning when it's kind of kicking off. There may be some where it's every other month for a little bit, where we may be in a little lull, like things are taking a little bit longer, right? But for the most part, I'll be here every month talking about it.
Great. So it won't become a static piece of paper. That's great.
Right.
So you are asking then to be put on our agenda monthly to start with.
Yeah.
Whatever,
just to
David.
keep it going.
Okay.
Okay.
Then
There.
thank you.
Thank you. I'm happy.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Could we also have, if the commissioners don't object, could we also have this in the manuals for us, for new commissioners too as well, when they come on board?
That's part of the plan, George. Part of the strategic plan is to create that orientation for new commissioners, and it will be included in there so that people align with the vision that's already been made.
David, this is Commissioner Mayer. Are they also going to, in that booklet or that orientation, also have an overview of the command brief, is what I call it, that we received as well?
It absolutely can. So that when I schedule that, that'll actually probably include all of you commissioners, right? Getting together the group to say, what do you feel you could have gotten from us when you first joined this commission to really succeed and to set you up for success right out the get-go? Not get-go. Just pulling all of us together so that we can come up with that and get really ready and really not just an orientation packet, but also talk about what it might look like to have one of you who's been on the commission for a number of years, then mentor that new person through for the first 6 months or so and really help them understand the role. So.
David, I wanted to add to that. I was talking with Joseph Lowe the other day, and we thought it would be exciting if all of the commissions and advisory committees pulled together to have a mentoring program. So it wouldn't necessarily just have to be the commission mentoring new commissioners, but also anybody who's wanting to be an advocate or a new advocate might be the way to go. So I'm not sure what the commissioners think about that idea, but I think it's another way where we can collaborate with like GCSS and the ODC.
I'm remembering when I first was a commissioner, I learned about the commission, but for all I knew, we were floating free in space. I wasn't aware how we connected to anything. So yeah, that would be very helpful to have intersection with our partners.
Well, especially those partners that we are mandated to work with. That
Yes.
we need a better understanding of who they are and how we interrelate and how what we do affects what they do.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
I'll see you soon.
Yes, Molly, you are here. Are you ready?
I am here. Yeah, I can get us started. My colleague, Kosti Efstathio is joining as well. I told him we were a little ahead of schedule, so he should be joining in a few minutes. When he hops on, I will introduce him. He's our curriculum development manager. So I'm so happy to be back with you all again this month. And the goal of today's update is really discussion, I guess, is to give you an update on our continuing education, but also hopefully the majority of the time we have hear from you all about ideas you have as we continue to build our course catalog for continuing education. So we can go to the next slide. That would be great. I think back in October, maybe, I was with you all and gave a big update on CareWell training altogether. So this slide might look familiar. This is an outline of the continuing education requirement and how providers meet their requirement for continuing education. And it's really broken out into three groups. And the first two here, foundational practices and cultural competency, are required courses that make up a third of the requirement. Of the 12 hours that are required, this makes up 4 hours. The remaining 8 hours of required credits, the provider gets to choose from electives. So we have been, slowly building that curriculum catalog. I think Heidi shared with all of you in advance the full catalog, so you can look through it at your leisure and see the courses and see some of a brief description of what those courses look like. But as you all know, the deadline for continuing education as a mandatory requirement for renewal was delayed to March 2026. And part of the reason for that is to continue to build this elective catalog and really have a robust offerings for all provider types, right? So these trainings are for home care workers, for personal support workers, and for personal care attendants. So we want to make sure that we have trainings that are both broadly applicable, but also are interesting to different provider types and applicable to different provider types. So yeah, let's go to the next slide. This is a list, it might be hard to see, but again, this is all from the course catalog. So just to give you an idea of the current electives available, these courses range from brief 15 to 30-minute self-paced courses to longer webinars that might be instructor-led, or longer self-paced courses up to an hour and a half. We try to keep them kind of bite-sized so that folks can pick and choose what interests them or what might be applicable to them based on the client consumer that they're working with. So, and we know that for self-paced, when you're sitting on a computer, just going through stuff, like having them much longer than an hour and a half can be really challenging. So here's this, if we go to the next slide, this is about 15 hours of currently available electives. And then these are our electives that are in development for 2024. So we've really been prioritizing curriculum development for continuing education within CareWell, within the care provider, in-home care provider program. And so we have these, some of these are already with the OHCC internal review committee, others will be coming in future submissions. But by the end of 2024, our hope is that we add another 25 plus hours of available electives to the continuing education catalog. So I want to spend some time on these questions. Before I do that, I wanted to lift up one other thing, which isn't on a slide, but Kosti and David have been meeting regularly as we do to discuss the various courses that are with OHCC and the review committee for edits and approvals. And we've been talking about adding in a step to get more feedback from the review committee earlier on in the process. And so I think it's a really exciting development. We're going to start maybe in May or June, I can't remember the exact date, but when our next kind of round of submissions, we're going to our hope is to pull together the review committee to review outlines of the training. So right now the review committee looks at the modules when they're pretty far into development and gives a lot of feedback, looks at them, as many of you know who are on the committee, gives feedback, checks for policy, compliance, all those types of things. And we think it'll be really valuable to add in a step earlier in the process when the training is really in the outline stage of what are the learning objectives, how do we think we're going to get there, and getting all the committee's eyes on that before we start actually developing the training. So I'm going to pause there, and I see Paul has his hand up.
Yeah, so Molly, just a reaction. I'm really excited to hear about what you're saying. I think that'll be helpful and moving that closer, earlier in the process. So that's helpful. I think we would certainly also desire that. Secondly, earlier on in the foundational courses, which I can't really see on my screen now because of the font, but there was a recent transmittal that was passed regarding health and safety reporting. And so I just thought that might be something, if that could be revised or put into the reporting abuse and neglect information, since it's recent, but it's also very vital to that topic. I don't know if that's let's see here. Is that a self-paced course? So that could possibly just be revised on an online course. So you could access that transmittal. Ginny could provide additional information if needed, but we would want people to be aware of that resource, of that way to report.
Great, thanks so much, Paul. That's helpful. And I made a note of it, and I'll definitely follow up to make sure we have that included.
Molly, this is Jenny. Do you mind mentioning real fast the SHU program?
Yeah, of course. So in February, March, maybe about a month ago, we launched CareWell Kicks, which is a new benefit for providers who finish their mandatory training. So it's a free pair of slip-resistant, safe shoes that come in a variety of styles. There's over 70 styles. They're free to the provider. So this is, we're really, really excited about it. We borrowed this idea from a training program in Washington State that works with in-home state in-home care providers in Washington State. And basically for, as of January 1, anyone who completed their new worker training or anyone going forward who completes their new worker training or anyone who's completed continuing education requirement will get, be able to go onto this website and get a free pair of shoes. So we've already had many people, I don't have the number off the top of my head, but over 1,000 providers who have gone in and ordered a pair of shoes off this site and received them. And it's really exciting, just because I'm sure all of you know, as providers are on their feet all day working, like having a solid pair of shoes is not just a fun little treat. It's actually really critical to being safe at work, especially having non-slip shoes. So we're excited to see this program continue to grow and providers sharing with each other that they got their shoes. And we think it's a valuable benefit on its own, but also hope that it helps us motivate folks to finish their required training in a timely way and kind of have a little carrot at the end of that road to finish their training and be in compliance and have more of the potential providers complete their new worker training and be able to go on to be care providers. George?
Yes, I know I've said this numerous of times, but as I'm going down the list, when this was handed to me in my email, I don't see the word autonomic dyslexic in this list. Can you tell me, am I missing something?
So this is, I know that this isn't all inclusive because there's also the trainings through the Oregon Home Care Commission directly. So I'm not sure if that's a training that's handled there with the VDQ certification.
Yeah, it is. Thank you.
Great. So yeah, that's part of the OHCC training. So Carewell, just as a reminder, does the mandatory continuing education training, but folks who have a certification such as PDC, VDQ are exempt from the Carewell requirement. So those trainings are provided through the Oregon Home Care Commission.
So they don't connect with each other?
No, right, they're two separate systems. That's right.
Oh.
I mean, we talk, right? Roberta and I talk occasionally and check in, and we're in connection with each other, but we aren't. We are two different systems.
Then I guess I need to better understand the difference between Carewell and what you just said, because I just want to make sure that that is on a stepping stone for state providers to understand when saving a life type situation that they're in.
Absolutely. And it sounds like that is part of the OHCC training. And I actually see that Kosti just joined, so I wanted to take a minute to give him a chance to introduce himself. Kosti, we were a little ahead of schedule, so I got us started, but would you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. I am Kosti Efsithio, the new curriculum development manager. Many of you probably knew Whitney beforehand, and so I am Whitney left and I am now Whitney. So nice to see some familiar faces again, and yeah.
Thanks, Kosti. So what we're hoping is that with the time we have, folks could share and just feel free to come off mute. You can also raise your hand, put it in the chat, whatever works for you. If we could actually go back one, Heidi. To hear from you, what topics would you like to see offered as continuing education courses? Or another way to think about it is, what skills do you feel providers need to learn or improve to do their job well? We have kind of the next year ahead of us mapped out for what we're going to develop as far as elective courses, but one that's it's flexible. So if there are things that we want to prioritize, I think we can do that. But also we're going to continue to be building this catalog going forward. So we're just building kind of building a bucket of training topics that we want to start putting into development. Ruth?
One of the things that I'm concerned on is that we keep setting up all these trainings and everything. But what kind of training are we doing to help people to think outside the box? That each person is an individual and each person has an individual need. And just because this is the way the class was taught may not meet the person's need, and they need to be able to think out, what does this person need?
I think that's a really good point, Ruth. And I think I would share two kind of reactions. One is, we've worked really hard to make sure that all, as Paul just put in the chat, that all of our trainings are really focused or are developed from a person-centered services lens, so that and we get that feedback from the review committee as they're looking through, but we also our curriculum team under Kosti's leadership really tries to keep that at the forefront of developing curriculum. So there's no way to put any training out there that will be exactly what every situation entails, exactly what every consumer or client needs. It's just going to be an example and kind of the best practices in a certain area. And so I think what you're lifting up is really key. And then I think the other thing that I would love to hear more thoughts from you too, but there's training on specific skills needed to do specific tasks, and then there's maybe what you might call soft skills or something, just becoming a better provider generally speaking. And so that's something we haven't done a ton of, but if there are ideas folks have for more generalized skills that would help in multiple situations, I think that would be something helpful to explore. George, I'm not sure if that was a new hand or a leftover hand.
I wanted to ask you one more question. The 8-hour thing was addressed. Could you tell me a little bit more about the 8-hour class before not working anymore? Why the requirement of 8 hours?
This is the core training, Molly. So we know that some people don't finish their core training and have to leave the workforce because they didn't fulfill their requirements. And George was asking earlier if we knew why that was.
Yeah,
so I guess, but I don't know if we know for sure, but I know it's something that's on your radar and my radar and the program's radar and how we can improve that.
Yeah, absolutely. George, I think that's a key question. It's something that I don't think has one answer. I think that, with any workforce, in particular this workforce, the reasons people come and go from it are varied and not a singular reason for anything. But one thing we want to make sure that we're doing is anything that's within our control. So making sure that the requirements are clear, making sure we're offering wraparound supports, meaning offering multiple modalities, different ways to take a training, stipends, things that we know make a difference for folks to be able to complete their training. All of those things are things we want to make sure we're doing the very best we can. Technical difficulties, I think right when I hopped on, I heard folks talking about computer literacy and navigating the online aspect of many of these trainings. And so that aspect of things is something we're really working to fix and make the best, not fix, I would say, but continue to improve. And we are starting a new program very soon where a new manager is starting next week that will be developing a training navigator program. So these are going to be folks who are reaching out proactively to people who have been through orientation but haven't yet completed their core training. I'm really trying to identify some of these questions or answers to this question, which is, what's holding you back from completing this training? How can we support you in this training? So I think over the next 6 months, we're going to get a lot more information on our end of what are the actual barriers, because right now it's kind of our best guess. We don't have a good way to gather that information. So as we start to gather that information and hear from folks who are having trouble completing, one, we hope to be able to work with them to complete their training. So we want our completion rates to go up. But for the folks who don't end up doing it, we want to understand the why so that we can build strategies to take away those barriers. And then we know there will always be a small group of people who just, maybe they go through the orientation and they realize this isn't for them, right? So there's also that aspect. So we want to understand what that number of kind of self-resigning folks are versus someone who hit a barrier and would want to have finished but couldn't for whatever reason.
Okay, well, the reason for my question for that 8-hour is I have a concern. I like all your classes that you're doing for these state providers, but it comes to mind, what if there's a burnout for these providers where they're taking too many hours? The whole 8 hours for a class. Has that ever been considered that there might be a burnout and not wanting to take no more? That would be my concern.
I mean, I don't know that we have any data on that. I will say that the impetus for starting a mandatory training program really came from a desire of providers to have more training and more professional development. So our assumption and kind of how our guiding principle is that folks want training. And 8 hours self-paced sounds like a lot, but it's also over, folks have months to do it. So it's not, I don't think the number of hours is prohibitive. And actually in other states, the requirement's much higher. So we feel like it's a good balance. But to your point, I think we'll hear that as we start to gather that information, if that is a concern. Right now it is the requirement. So we're working within those rules.
I just don't want to end up seeing that state provider doing all these hours, which is a good thing, but also not coming to the point where they're burned out and not wanting to do it anymore. I know of a provider that wants to do more classes, more classes, more classes, more classes, but they're feeling like they're almost burnt out. And if there is some way that us commissioners can work with you in how to figure this out without no burnout, we may have something to go on for more state providers to join.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see if as we gather real data on that, on the reasons, to see what those reasons are and if that comes up. That's not something, to be honest, that I've heard for the core training. And although there is, I will say, of course, we're trying to increase completion rates. We're averaging between 75 and 80% completion rates. So it's not a big number that is not continuing on with core. 1,000 is too many, but 1,000 in a year or however many it might be in a year that don't complete, that's out of 8,000 who go through orientation. So I think that the key that we're trying to figure out really is how we don't think that training or training requirements necessarily answers all the questions to why people aren't completing. And so we're going to try and gather that information and be able to then act upon it.
Okay.
So Molly, this is Paul Johnson. I put in the chat there just some ideas, and again, these certainly may be covered previously. But I just suggested maybe if they're not, possibly they could be shorter trainings. I don't know. Number one was So I'm on a falls prevention committee, and we're working on trying to determine how we could help mitigate the falls that a consumer has in their home and things like that. And training is an important part of that, obviously, among other things. So when and how should a provider report a consumer's fall? Maybe that's already addressed. But if a person just kind of slips out of their chair and so forth, as opposed to somebody falling and hitting their head and really, needing emergency medical, between all the scope, or maybe the consumer arrives and the person has some bruises or something, whatever. When are we providing an adequate information regarding reporting concerns that are appropriate to report, or that maybe err on the side of safety? Number two, how and when do we communicate a concern to address the issue with a case manager? Case managers do not manage the home care worker or the provider. They manage the consumer's services, but often they are either contacted too much or not contacted enough by to know about the concerns that a provider may have. So maybe some guidelines, if they're not addressed, about how a provider is to interact with the consumer's case manager, when and how that's done. Number three, I mentioned, is others in the home who are not authorized as a consumer employer representative in the case of APD, or they're not a guardian, or they have no right within our system of services to direct what's going on in the life of the consumer regarding their services. So is there any training maybe that could be amplified, or maybe there is currently, to help the provider know how to kind of navigate people that are telling them how to do their job, what tasks are needed? No, we don't need that task, or just those type of things. These are difficult dynamics, I understand, but maybe I just think that sometimes providers feel a lot of pressure, maybe to do things that really are not necessarily authorized, or that are maybe needed. And so anyway, I just mentioned those items.
Thanks, Paul. That's great.
Paul, this is Jenny. I just want to add, when during the early development of the orientation and the core trainings, we really did focus a lot on communicating, having that communication with the case manager, what type of things to report, the person-centered services. So I know that early on we did discuss that, but I can see that there may be opportunities in some of the other continuing education courses, just to kind of put another plug in there, that, if you see something or hear something that you're concerned about, to let the case manager know, have that discussion with the person you're working for, and then also to let the case manager know.
Yeah, I'll add one more thing, which is one thing we've been doing is kind of going through the core trainings and orientation even, and pulling out, we'll get requests, why don't we have a training on this? And then it ends up being a piece of core or orientation. But rather than having to go back and retake core orientation, 4 hours of self-paced, or an in-person orientation, to be able to pull out some of those skills and topics from those trainings and make them into their own standalone CE course, so that as folks want refreshers on things, maybe their consumer employer has changed and they have different needs, like being able to pull those core training topics out into individualized courses, because folks aren't taking training every year, right? They're taking it every 2. So I think that's a really good flag for our kind of review of those core trainings, and making sure we're thinking about what we're pulling out to make into individual courses. George?
Yeah, one suggestion I'd like to make as commissioner, if a state provider is taking a class and they're doing all these hours, I'm wondering if they could put on, say like they take 4 classes and they're required to take these many hours of other classes, if they can put down that they need a break for 3 days or so, if that could keep that within its realm and rules of them not being disqualified to be a provider, to get back on to doing and to classes again. Would that help? if there was a note put in from a provider stating that they're almost burnt out and that they need 3 days rest before they can continue with other classes, would that help the number of providers?
I think you might be thinking about an OHCC training format. I'm not sure. I know that there are different formats within OHCC, but for CareWell and the core trainings, providers basically have 4 months to do their training at their own pace. So they don't have to do it every day in a certain amount of time. It's all core 1 and core 2 are all self-paced. So there's no need for that. They can take a break whenever they want. They can, pause and take a week off and then come back to it. So that's not an issue for the CareWell trainings, but again, it might for some of the certificate trainings. I'm not really sure. I couldn't speak to that.
And do you have a class on depression?
It is in development, I believe. Kosi, can you confirm that? We have some mental health courses that are in line to be in development.
Yes, those are slated for the end of this year. We have some other mental health courses. We just wanted to have a subject matter expert before starting to put those courses together.
Because I'd like to see a class where a state provider is able to deal with a person with depression.
Yeah, and for all the mental health, we met with OHA to talk about specifically for personal care attendants, but of course it can be applicable across provider types. The kind of the top 5 mental and behavioral health issues that or diagnoses, whatever's appropriate, that might be experienced by folks that are getting care. And we started with those 5, and we're really going to be approaching those from exactly what you said, George, is okay, this isn't about diagnosing someone, but this is about caring for someone, interacting with someone, best practices, do's and don'ts, those types of things.
Molly, this is Marsha Wenzel. You had mentioned before about letting us view the outline of courses you're developing. Mm-hmm. Could we receive outlines on the current courses you're working on instead of just sometime in the future?
So the current courses that aren't in outline form, the review committee already has and has seen. So there are courses that are in I don't know if it's storyboard. I don't know the lingo. I'm not a curriculum designer, but okay, in a certain format that's already been reviewed. So the next set of outlines will come to you all when they're ready, and that's when we'll start this. So we're on kind of a quarterly cadence.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Paul?
Yeah, just a question that crossed my mind, but I just thought I'd ask it. I wonder when we're thinking about development or maybe revision of any existing trainings as well, if you've ever thought, or maybe you do this, to gather a group of home care workers, maybe in some type of a Zoom chat situation, or you could just kind of get input from them, about what are the major challenges you're facing, what types of training do you feel you maybe need a refresher on or didn't understand, or what are the key issues that you feel like you need some assistance on regarding the services you provide, whatever. Again, maybe this is a practice that you follow, I don't know, but just having some regular interaction and feedback from those who are doing the work. I'm sure I would maybe even learn and be surprised, hey, I didn't realize that was such a concern, or, oh, that makes a good point. We realize that, whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. But anyway, just a suggestion, if that's not something that's part of the practice, and I'm sure local offices or others could, or there's even local offices who have home care worker coordinators who may be able to provide input. Again, when things are being discussed and developed, just to make sure that there might be issues or concerns that you would want to know about, that you would learn about through that type of interaction.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. I think that's a great suggestion. We do that a little bit of, our CareWell board of trustees is our home care workers. So we definitely get their input, but especially as we do our review process for the core trainings, that's a really good flag for us. And I think, getting beyond just our board and pulling in a wider variety of providers, different provider types, I think is really key. And the home care coordinators at the local offices is a really good idea as well. So thank you for that.
Okay. Is that sums it up for you, Molly?
Yeah, if there are no more ideas to share, that's what we've got. So thank you so much.
Okay, and we are expecting you to come back with more information for us.
Okay, anytime.
Okay, and we are scheduled now for a break. So we will come back and listen to what Jane Ellen has to tell us after the break.
How long is our break, Ruth? When should we be back?
I don't know. The agenda's not in front of me.
That's why I asked you.
Okay, we need to be back by 12.
Okay.
I just put the agenda back up.
Thank you.
Hey, Ruth.
Okay. Yes.
We missed you, Ruth. On the one.
Oh, yes. Well, I had 3 things scheduled on the same day.
Yeah, we were waiting for you. We wanted
Yeah.
your input.
Yeah, I wrote in. I sent an email in, but nobody got it in time. Go ahead, the rest of you to your break.
Okay, I'm taking a break too, and the recording will remain on.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, George, I had 3 things going at the same time, just like I'm supposed to be in another Zoom right now. But things are just moving that fast.
Okay. Well, just to let you know, since I'm the chair of the other committee, we and others are really,
Well, I got your email in between telling me where I was supposed to be, but there wasn't any way I could get there.
yeah, well, I wanted to let you know that you're very valued in your opinion. That's why we were.
Thank you. Hi, Matt. Have you heard from Jane Ellen?
Yeah, she'll be joining in just a moment.
Okay. I know with her busy schedule, I didn't know whether you got left holding the bag.
Nope, she's planning to be here.
Okay.
I'll double check with her, see if she has an ETA.
We're glad to have you anyway. We don't get to see that much of you anymore.
That's true, although I did join you all last month for a little bit for the OPIM discussion, but happy to come on back again for agency with choice. I just pinged her, so I think she'll join in a moment.
Okay.
She'll be here in just a minute, she said.
Hey, Matt.
Yeah.
My charging station idea will be across the whole state of Oregon here before too long.
I'm sorry, say that again?
My charging station idea for power chairs will be coming over the state of Oregon before too long.
Oh, really?
Mhm.
Oh, that sounds good.
I planned on presenting that to the advisory councils next Thursday at the Mid-Willamette Valley, or I guess it's Northwest Senior and Disabled Services, and see if they want to get on board with it.
Cool. I know ODOT is.
Yeah, and I've also been haranguing PGE in trying to set up something with their charging for the car batteries if there wasn't some place that they could plug a wheelchair into the same thing.
Yeah, Pacific Power helped us.
Mhm. There's Jane Ellen.
Hello,
Are you ready?
I am. Can I share my screen though?
That's up to Heidi.
Heidi, can I share my screen, please? Oh,
There you go.
let's try that again. Okay. Can you guys see my PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay. So I think a lot of you know a lot of this already. Well, anyway, I think you know most of this, but I wanted to go through kind of where we're at today, and start talking about next steps. So Agency with Choice update. So as a reminder, we currently have 3 options: the Consumer Employer Program, in-home care agencies, and Independent Choices Program. Home Care Commission helps with the work around the Consumer Employer Program for home care workers, and Independent Choices Program for the personal support workers that are hired through that program. Very shortly, in January of 2026, right? I'm doing my years right. We will have a 4th choice, which is Agency with Choice. And the intent on this is really to provide another option, not replace current options, but add another option that is to support workers and consumers in the relationship that they have, and to meet the needs of both the worker and the consumer. So APD and the Oregon Health Authority is going to contract with up to 2 agencies. And this all says APD because I haven't updated it, but when we reread the House Bill 4129, it was really clear that the legislature intends for OHA and APD that there'll be up to 2 agencies serving both populations, not 2 serving APD and 2 serving behavioral health. So this is we're going to be in this together, and we're working with them on with that. The agency with choice contractors are going to assume full employer responsibilities. They're going to be the employers of the direct support workers. But that doesn't mean that they're taking over the responsibility of the consumer direction for the individual. This is an option that will be available to everyone in the APD system who's eligible for in-home supports through the Medicaid program. So Medicaid in-home consumers and state plan personal care consumers will be able to access this. For the Oregon Health Authority, it'll be individuals who currently who have their state plan personal care benefit, and in the future, their 1915I, which is another funding mechanism through Medicaid. And the consumer gets to choose if they want to do this. And the consumer gets to choose which of the agency with choice workers they're going to have serve their needs. So the agency with choice has a responsibility for the consumer support, worker support, and administration of their agency. So the consumer support is that they have to maximize individuals' autonomy. They have to meet with the individual to help them with their service plan and making decisions about what is the type of worker that they want referred to them. And then they have to help with the individual to select and train the direct support worker. That's going to be the new term. Coordinate direct support workers' schedules to meet the risk schedule of the individual. And they have to help the individual maintain a safe workplace for the direct support worker. And then they'll assist the individual with planned absences. And then they also have to create and maintain an advisory board with consumers on that advisory board. They'll do additional support for workers. They'll ensure that they have training. They'll involve the direct support workers in the decisions about how the agency is formed, work processes, performance standards, etc. They're supposed to minimize the impact of lost pay and work hours when the consumer no longer needs them. Say the consumer has to go to the hospital or they've chosen a different service option. They have to enhance the direct support worker's role as a member of the individual's care team. And they have to ensure that the direct support workers have access to support and coordination services. And then they have administration, right? They have to recruit and hire and dismiss just direct support workers. They have to ensure electronic visit verification and time capture compliance. They're going to manage payroll, benefits, and time off. They'll bill us for the hours that their workers work. They'll maintain a quality and assurance system and a performance improvement plans, and they're responsible for reporting abuse and critical incidences to us. And I don't think we said in this slide, and I should have said, is APD and OHA are going to license these providers. And the reason why we want to license them, and we were asked for that to be in the language in the statute, is because that gives us more authority. If we just have a contract with somebody, it's our options are more limited, but having a license, we get to hold the licensees accountable for the quality of care that their direct workers or direct support workers are providing. And we get to hold them accountable for abuse and critical incidents. If we just had a contract, it's much more difficult to do that. We have to establish a rate that is going to allow us to pay allow the agency with choice to pay the direct support worker comparable wages and benefits to what home care workers get, so through the collective bargaining process. They also have to have the ability in this wage to support substitute direct support workers due to canceled shifts, absences, and respite care for the individual's unpaid caregivers in similar need. Now to where we're at today. So, this is a very high level timeline. Our first step in this process, again, the implementation we have to have signed contracts in place by January of 2026. To get from here to there, we want to do a lot of consumer engagement, and I'm going to talk about that in the next slide. But we also have to hire new staff because this is a brand new responsibility and our current staff can't handle additional work. We have to draft Oregon administrative rules. We have to file a state plan with the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. We have to get the contract out, and then we're going to need to make IT changes and other changes in our systems and business processes to make sure that this works when we go live on January 1st of 2026. And I want to be clear that this is all planning time period. We are not going to have consumers enrolled on January 2026. That's the next phase, is actually implementation. But we have to have the contract signed by January 1st of 2026, which really means in government world, because we're closed January 1st, is we have to have contracts in place no later than December 31st of 2025. So we do really want to do a lot of work with consumers because this will be a change for the consumer system and will impact consumers more than anybody else. So one of the things that we're planning is a consumer advisory committee, separate and distinct from all of our advisory councils, which we'll be engaging with as well. But we want to really reach out to consumers who use in-home services and have them help us design the administrative rules. We want them to help us with the contract and what are the requirements for the contract. As an example, we have a statement of work, and from the statement of work, the vendor, the people who want to do this work for us, will submit a proposal, and then we have to score that proposal, and then we give them the contract. And we want to have consumers engaged in that process all the way through. And part of that is that we have a lot of people who have been an advocate for a long time, but we want to use this as an opportunity to help get new consumers engaged in our process and build out our advisory committees and get more people who are directly receiving services engaged in what we do. So we're going to do a mailing to in-home consumers and invite them to participate at whatever level they can, and we're going to ask them some questions along the way. We're going to do the rule development work groups. So these are before the official rule advisory committees, but we're going to have people help us develop the rules. And then we will have our official rule advisory committees. And then because we have to do a state plan amendment, we're going to do a design and implementation council. And if you've been around a long time, you'll remember we did this when we filed the 1915K, but we will be doing an amendment to the state plan 1915K, and that requires a design and implementation council. So a lot of work that we want to do with consumers, really get people's feedback and input and work with people as we move forward. And I think that's the last slide. So questions, comments? And I'll stop sharing so I can see people's faces. Ruth, I'm happy to share. I just finished it moments ago.
Jane Ellen, this is Commissioner Adams. Help me explain, understand this. The DSWs, are those home care agencies?
No, PSWs are similar to home care workers, but they serve people through the Office of Developmental Disabilities or Independent Choices.
No, DSWs.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you said PSWs. So the DSW, the direct support workers, will be employees of the agency with choice.
Okay, so what does AWC stand for?
AWC is agency with choice. It's this new model that we will have. So we'll have if I can go back and I'll show this slide again, maybe.
So the agency for home care is the home care agency.
So it's a little different. So right now, can you see my screen? Is it letting me show? Nope. So if you look at this slide, is it showing the slide yet?
No.
There, how's that? Did it
Yeah.
work? So if you look at, we have the consumer employer program, which in APD is the home care worker, right? So
Mhm.
that person is hired directly by the consumer and the state pays that person. That we enroll the home care worker and then we authorize them to work a certain number of hours and then they get paid directly by us. But the day-to-day tasks, all of that is all managed by the consumer employer.
Mhm.
In the current model, we have the in-home care agencies and they hire caregivers and they're responsible for background checks, for training, for
Mhm.
supervising the person and authorizing what services the person can do. As an example, if the person needs medications, they need to delegate that caregiver to do the medications for the consumer.
Mhm.
But they're fully responsible for their employees. And then we have this new model, which is the agency with choice. So the agency with choice will be the employer, the official employer, but the consumer is still managing the day-to-day activities. So as an example, back in that medication management issue, the agency with choice will not be doing nurse delegation as an example. The consumer will be telling the direct support worker, please go get my meds, fill my med box, give me my 2 p.m. meds.
So who's the option to become an agency with choice? Is
So
what-
we're going to contract with a new entity that we don't know who that will be. So we're going to develop the rules. We will get a permission from the federal government to do this, and then we will then do the RFP and then select a new agent, this new agency to do these services.
These are going to be different ones across the state.
There can only be up to 2 for the whole entire state.
Okay, I'm just hoping this is not going to be too confusing for consumers.
We hope so too, which is one of the reasons why we want consumers to be engaged all the way throughout this process.
Okay.
So the way I think of it is really it's a hybrid between an in-home care agency and the consumer employer program. But they have different responsibilities. So there's really distinct differences between an in-home care agency and an agency with choice. And so we'll need to explain that, and we'll need to give tools to case managers that helps case managers explain those differences.
So the case manager will be involved
Mm-hmm.
with the agency of choice, just like they are with the home care worker model.
Kind of. What they'll be doing is they'll be authorizing services. So just like today, a consumer says, I want an in-home care agency. And the case manager says, okay, here's the 3 different ones that are available in your community, or here's the one that's available in your community. And the consumer chooses which one they want. And then the case manager authorizes the in-home care agency to work a specific number of hours for that consumer based on what the consumer wants. The case manager will still do that level of work for the agency, consumers who select the agency with choice, but they won't be directly working with the direct support worker like they do the home care worker.
Okay. Is this going to be a list in every branch?
There won't really be a list because there's only going to be only two. So the same ones will be available in Burns that are available in Portland.
But what I'm asking is, if a consumer walks into a branch of the state office,
Mm-hmm.
will there be a list of options is what I'm asking?
Yes. Oh, yes. Yeah. So the case manager will be doing choice counseling and help consumers make the decision about what works for them.
I
You know,
feel-
I mean, it's the consumer gets to make the decision, but the case manager will help the consumer understand the different options that are available to them.
Okay, well then I feel relieved. And what did you mean, Matt, by up to 2 entities per bill?
Rachel asked a question in the chat. Her question was answered already when Jane Ellen was responding, but I also wrote it at the same time. We're allowed to, per the bill that was passed, we're allowed to contract with up to 2 entities to provide the agency with choice services throughout the state.
Okay, thank you.
Jane Ellen, this is Marsha Wenzel. Were you just saying that agency with choice will be the one to set the rules and to do the racks?
No, no,
Is
that
it
we will
just
do that. No, we'll do that. We being
and
APD.
will? Okay, thank you. I didn't know who the pronouns were referring
Yeah.
to.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll set the, basically, if you think of the administrative rules and the contract, it's the legal authority and the requirements for what the agency will have to do. So we're going to tell them A, B, and C, and then they have to do A, B, and C. Ruth?
I still have a concern that people are going to receive workers that don't have the skill that matches their needs. And that when you call an agency, or even when a case manager calls an agency and saying, we need a worker for this person, is the agency with choice going to be sending somebody that has the skill level to work with this person? Or are they going to send somebody who's available that may not have those skills?
That'll be what we're going to need to put into rule, Ruth, is that, so first, this is different. Like right now, an in-home care agency decides who they're sending to the person's
Right.
house, right? In the agency with choice model, that's not the intent. I say it's the choice at the front door, right? It's right now in the consumer employer program, the consumer selects who knocks on their door on Monday morning to provide their care, right?
Right.
In an in-home care agency world, the agency decides who knocks on that consumer's door.
Exactly.
In an agency with choice model, it's still the consumer who's saying, I want that provider, that direct support worker to come meet my needs. Now, they may say, I don't know who I want. I don't have anybody. Can you help me? Then they have to work with the agency with choice to find the right fit for them. But the consumer still gets to select exactly who's coming. Does that help?
Well, good in theory, but I don't see it happening the way you're saying, because I think that the demand is going to be such that the agency with choice is not going to be able to keep up with the demand. And I'm concerned about the level of care that people are going to receive.
Well, and I think that's one of the reasons why the administrative rules in the contract will need to really spell that out. And it also means that the agency will have to say, you know, we can't accept any more people because we don't have workers that meet these people's needs. Just like an adult foster home may say, I don't want to serve this person because I don't have the staff or the skills to serve that person. That will be up to the agency to say, as well as the consumer. They're going to be legally required to be able to meet the needs of the people that they're accepting that they're going to serve.
But what happens to that person in the meantime?
Well, they'll if the agency with choice doesn't want to serve them or cannot serve them, then they will be able to select from the other options that are available to all consumers, just like today. If a consumer wants an in-home care agency, but none of the in-home care agencies have vacancies or cannot meet their needs, determines they can't meet their needs, then the consumer needs to pick a different service option. Well, and that's a good point, Matt. So the consumer can also choose to have, they can have a mix of all 4 of these different service options, right? They could choose to have an in-home care agency do Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and a home care worker do Saturday and Sunday, and an agency with choice do Tuesday and Thursday. I think that'd be really complicated if they did it that way, but they would be able to. But there's a lot of consumers that have both they have home care workers and in-home care agencies, and I would assume the same is going to be true in the future with the agency with choice. And I'm also assuming that some of the consumers may say to their home care worker, you know, I think it would be better for both of us if we move over to this agency with choice. Will you come with me when I go to the agency with choice?
Jane Allen, this is Commissioner Adams. Through this process, once it gets all put together, I know that you don't have a crystal ball, but how many more programs will the state have to serve the consumers, the providers?
Well, there can only be 2.
No, and I know that.
Sorry.
Sorry. I guess what I'm asking is, down the road, how many more options will a consumer have? Is there going to be new programs come out like this choice?
Oh, you mean, I have no idea if we'll see other new options. I based on what I see in other states, I think we've maximized the different options that are out there. I'm thinking if I can think of, I know that like some countries do more support for family caregivers, but you know, like they'll pay them or they'll give them more respite than we do in Oregon. But I don't see anything really dramatic occurring in our state. You know, we're going to have this new service delivery option. We already have our community-based care options. We are adding in Oregon Project Independence Medicaid to serve a different group of people. I just don't think that I can think of any other options that we don't already have in Oregon.
Okay, if this is gonna be put into place, I would like to request, once again, that this group of people understand what autonomic dose reflexic is, and I know they're gonna be dealing with, like Ruth's concern about people that are in wheelchairs. They need to understand what that term word is and what the do's and don'ts is.
What we were referring to, Jane Ellen, in the meeting before is teaching home care workers to think outside the box and be able to take their training and put it to the use of the person that they're serving, rather than making the person they're serving fit what they're trained.
Yeah, I think that this agency, well, the direct support worker is still under the authority of the consumer. So if the consumer wants their worker to be trained on a specific disease or condition or risk factor, then they need to work with the agency to make sure that that person is trained to do that. Does that answer that, Ruth?
Well, no, well, that's part of our concern is though, when the agency is contacted by the case manager to send someone out, they send whoever's there that can go. And sometimes they won't be appropriately trained to even understand what the need is, let alone not, be ready to meet the needs of the person.
Yeah, I mean, the agency will be responsible to ensure that the people that they're sending to provide care to somebody are trained to meet that person's needs. But it's also the consumer, right? This is still a self-directed program. It is still the consumer's responsibility to train the worker and to ensure that the agency with choice understands who is appropriate to send to them.
But that doesn't always hold true because workers quite often come in with the basis that they've been trained to do it this way, and that's the way it's done. And it doesn't always work for the worker to be able to think outside the box and see the individual needs. And we're concerned that the individual needs can get lost, especially with the agency with choice.
Yeah, I think it is still a self-directed program. So the consumer is going to need to make sure that the worker is the right person for them. So let's say they send someone who doesn't understand a condition or the needs or won't listen to the way that the consumer wants a service to be delivered, then it's up to the consumer. Hold on just a second. I did not want to cough in your ear, or many of your ears. It would be up to the consumer to tell the agency with choice, this person is not meeting my needs and they're not listening to me. And then it'll be the agency with choice's job to say, worker, you're not doing what the consumer wants you to do.
But what happens to the consumer while all this other stuff's going on?
I don't think we should see agency with choice as a solution to all the problems in our system. The same thing occurs today with the consumer employer program. The consumer selects this home care worker to be their worker, and if that's not a good fit, then they say, I don't want that person to meet my needs. It's the consumer's job to then find another home care worker that can meet their needs. And that may mean that in a short period of time, they don't have a home care worker. And the same will be true with an agency with choice.
That's my concern right there, is what's going to happen to that gap when a person doesn't have somebody to take care of them.
We don't have a solution today. Agency with choice doesn't solve the problem, nor does it make it worse, right? It may help. Hopefully it would help. But the consumer right now, we have many consumers who, when they fire their home care worker, or the home care worker leaves, or if we terminate the home care worker, they struggle to find a new home care worker.
Right.
And this agency may help with that, but it's not the waving a magic wand. And so just like an in-home care agency is going to be responsible to send somebody to provide that care, the consumer and the agency with choice are going to have to really work together to get someone in to meet the needs of the person. But this is not going to solve all of the problems that we have with access to caregivers. It just won't.
I'm just concerned very majorly of the services and people that are in wheelchairs. I mean, it's one of those big things.
I hear you, George, but it's again, consumers regardless of which service option a consumer picks, they have a responsibility to ensure, and maybe it's not them, maybe it's their guardian or their representative, but I'm using the consumer broadly in this discussion. But the consumer has a responsibility to ensure that they're communicating their needs, that they're directing the worker to meet those needs, and then communicating if it's a home care worker, it's their job to communicate that to if there's a problem with the local office. If it's an in-home care agency, they need to communicate that to an in-home care agency. If it's with an agency with choice in the future, then they'll be communicating that with the agency with choice.
I agree with you, Jane Ellen. It can be difficult on the other side of the wall at times.
Jane Ellen?
Totally, hold on just a second, Marcia, and then.
Sure.
I totally agree, you guys. This is not easy. It's not easy for workers and it's not easy for consumers. But the goal of the agency with choice is it's another option that is to empower consumers and support workers in the same way. So maybe it will ensure that individuals have that it's a better match. This is the way I want my services to be delivered and what I need my worker to be trained to do. And the worker has the support they need to be able to do that. Marcia, please.
Yes. Will you be using as a tool to help you decide what worker to send, like the nursing levels of care? So you know how many of what type of skill group and how many you have of that. And I thought I understood that you were going to do your own training. And am I understanding correctly?
So Marcia, it's not we, right? So there's a new entity being created by the,
yes.
So the agency with choice that we contract with will be responsible for training their workers. We will help define what the minimum requirements are, but that direct, like, I want this person to be trained to do A, B, and C, will still be with the consumer to say that to the agency with choice. Matt, I see your hand up if you want to jump in.
Yeah, I was gonna maybe describe it maybe in another way. Maybe it would be helpful or maybe not. When I think of agency with choice in general, I think of it as a program that still retains the full consumer directed type benefits that we see for our home care worker program. So none of that would be lost. They would be completely retained with that consumer choice and that consumer direction, just like we have for our home care worker program. What I see the advantage for those who are interested in receiving the agency with choice services, you still retain the same abilities. However, you'll have the ability to work with the agency with choice provider to get some assistance. And if you need help identifying another provider that can come in to provide assistance, that agency with choice provider can help you identify someone else that can meet your needs. But keep in mind, you're still going to have full ability and retention to decide, yes, this is a great fit, I will use this person, or no, I'm sorry, agency with choice, this is not a provider I want to work with, and I want to find someone else. And the agency with choice provider will be obligated to find someone else that would be a better match for you. So I see it as the best of both worlds. At least that's how I look at it. Retaining the full consumer choice and direction, but getting that assistance from an entity that will help you find a provider if you need that help.
Thank you. About the training, you will be with Agency with Choice. They'll be developing their own training. Is that my understanding?
Yes. We'll set in rule the minimum training that they have to have, and then the agency will be responsible for either developing that or finding someone that they can use or subcontract with to develop to use their training. But that'll be their choice as long as it meets our minimum threshold.
Okay, thank you.
Jane Ellen, one more question. In this choice program, once everything gets put together and such, because of the two entities you guys are going to be picking, will it be up to the agency that, since they're holding the responsibilities of everything, will the person that's doing the care for the employer, can they travel with the employer to go into other states and do things with them the same way? Say, for example, it's everything set up, two entities are already picked, yada, yada, yada down the road, and say an employee comes in, works for the employer, for the consumer, and the consumer has to go out of state for like a vacation. Will the employee be able to go with that employer on their vacation to help them out with their needs?
That's a hard discussion, George, because the agency has to pay the worker for every hour that the worker is not free to go do whatever they want, right? So there would not be nothing that would prohibit the agency with choice from allowing their employee to go to Washington for vacation, right? With the going with the consumer on vacation. But they likely would not allow it because they wouldn't have enough service hours to authorize it, if that makes sense. Because let's say that they're authorized for every 2 weeks, the consumer gets 40 hours every week, right? Well, if you send someone away with their consumer, you have to pay them the whole time they're away. So it's kind of the legal issue, but there would be nothing that we would do that would prevent people from doing that.
Okay, the reason why I'm asking the question is because you might end up getting more consumers joining, if that could help. Some consumers can go on vacations and like to have their people with them whenever something happens.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be up to the agency to decide in their business policies if they want to do that or not.
Okay.
Ruth?
On the agencies that we choose, can the agencies also be running this kind of program in other states at the same time?
I don't think there would be any. Yes, they could
Okay,
potentially
so
be running this in other states as well.
so they would already be in tune to what their state rules are, but would they be in tune to what Oregon's rules are?
Well, they would have to follow the rules, right? Because again, they'll before they propose, they will know what is in Oregon administrative rules. They'll know what is required based on the statement of work. So even if they're providing services from in another state, they have to learn the Oregon system to be able to provide care or supports in Oregon.
Just needed to make sure.
Yep. And that is one of the reasons why we wanted the appropriate level of staffing, because not just because of out of state, but we want to hold these new agencies accountable for the work that we're contracting them to do. So we will have staff in central office that will be helping to address contractual obligations and responsibilities.
Well, thank you, Jane Ellen, for
You're welcome.
opening this up wider for us and giving us more understanding.
And I'm sending the PowerPoint to Heidi to get out.
Okay.
Thank you. I will send that out today.
Jane Yellen, one more question.
Sure.
Once this gets up and going, can us commissioners have a analysis of the progress with us?
Happy to do that. And happy to come back. I mean, part of that, the commitment we're making is that we're going to engage with our advisory committees throughout this process on the development of this new agency. So we're happy to come back and talk monthly updates, whatever you and your executive committee want to have us come, and how frequently. We're happy to come.
On developing this new committee, is there any stipulations that maybe the Home Care Commission could have a seat on this committee?
So there's nothing that would prohibit that. I mean, we're creating it. It's not required in statute. We just think it's really important that we be able to listen to consumers in the development of this new agency model in Oregon. So yes, happy to have commission members attend.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Have a good rest of your day. Take care, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Okay, we have finished our agenda. Is there anything more that we need to talk about?
Yes, Ms. Chairman, but it would not be advisable to be having it in public record.
Okay, then we'll do it either by email or have to call a different meeting. Okay, anything else for today? Okay, then I am declaring us adjourned. And thank you for staying over, and thank you for being involved today.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye, everyone.